Hi everybody. Again, we're back in the NACTEC shop and we're going to start on reassembling the engine. So again, you knew there was a problem, you took the engine apart, you did all the measuring, you found out what the problem was, you got new parts that you needed, now you're going to put it back together. Okay, be back going again soon. Okay, so one of the things that's really important, again, like I said, you don't want the metal rubbing the metal. You can't have that or you're going to have issue. In other words, you're going to have the metal pieces will actually weld themselves together. This stuff is great. Okay, this is a reassembly grease that's used. Like say if I'm going to put the rod back on here, I put some of this on here. Okay, I put this on. Now this will be going on later up inside the engine. I'll show you how to put this piston in too. Here are the bolts and bolted on, and now when the engine first starts turning, you've got this layer of grease that the parts can ride on. You want that because it takes a while for the oil to get to the parts. Something I do when I'm rebuilding an engine that has an oil pump is I take off a valve cover and I take the plug out and I spin the engine over until I actually see the oil pump up to the top of the motor. Then I know that the oil is getting where it's supposed to be. I definitely do that before I fire it up, before I touch it off. Because you can, in just a few revolutions of the engine, if things are not lubricated, you just wasted your time. I think it's cool in the NASCAR motors. What they would do is there was a 3/8 inch drive underneath the distributor cap that they would take a drill and they would stick it in there and they would spin this, and what it did is it turned the oil pump, and they actually would lube, which makes sense. This motor probably costs $250,000, that they would lube it before they started it. So I'm actually kind of surprised that a lot of engines don't actually have that, where you go to start it, it'll spin the engine over for a while to make sure it's oil before it takes off. Okay, so it's really important. So again, here's your crankcase. Here's the crank. So again, if you would check, make sure you put new seals in here, maybe a new bearing if it needed it, and you put this in there. Okay. And something I'm going to show here quick. Let me try this one just so you guys can see it. Something else that we want to do here, want to watch for, is the governing system. These have a system in them where you want the engine to be spinning at the same RPM at all times, is the goal. Because if you're on it, like if this is mounted to a generator, you want the engine to be spinning at the same RPM so that you're getting the same output. So what happens if you start your skill saw and the engine engine RPMs are going to go down? What's going to happen is the governing system here with this little gear inside that matches with this gear is what it does. You notice how it moves this lever. Okay. See how it moves that lever? So what it does then is it changes the linkages on the carburetor, and what that'll do then is cause the butterfly in the carburetor to open up more, give it more air and give it more fuel, and it'll bring the RPMs back up again. So again, that's the governing system. It's extremely important, because if the governing system is not set up properly, it's not going to run. It's not going to run the way it's supposed to, and it can have the engine explode and blow up if the governing system is not set correctly. Okay, very important. So again, crankshaft would go in like so. The piston, now you got to watch on the piston too. See that arrow? So you look at the manual and it will tell you if the arrow is supposed to go this way or this way. Okay? Really important. By the way, see the little holes right here for the oil to drip out of? These little holes. These little holes here. Again, these two top rings are compression rings. And the bottom rings here are the oil rings. In other words, they're the ones that help keep the oil from getting up into the combustion chamber. It's amazing how efficient they are. Okay. Normally, it depends on the machine. Normally, that arrow goes toward the exhaust. Okay. So I'm just going to show you this quick. Get this guy to go in here. Okay. Now you can use ring compressors, and this will be part of the kits then that will go out with the engines. And this is slick. This is really slick. So what this can do then is you put it on and you squeeze it. And this has got a really cool ratcheting thing. And again, be real gentle. Don't force things. Okay. And then you can push the piston in then. Okay. I like to do it with my fingers. I don't know, I like the feel of doing it with my fingers. So you don't have to have that tool, but you can use your fingers and actually work this into here. Okay, I'm seeing the gap on the very first ring that's going in there. I can see the gap right there. Okay. And by the way, the rings, notice the gaps in the rings, they're supposed to be not lined up. So if you want to think about it with the circle, you could have the ring gaps on the oil ring here, and you also don't want the gaps in those rings to line up either, but have them like 120 degrees apart. So here, here, and here. So again, on the lower compression ring, let's say we have that one over here then, and then the top one over here. Again, you don't want the gaps to line up, because then you're losing explosion. You don't want to lose explosion. That's bad. Okay. Again, you can just keep massaging it around. And be gentle with these, because you could break them. They break. They're real brittle. They're made from cast. It's a really hard steel. But again, I'm massaging it back together. I'm not forcing anything. Let me try this again too. If you have this tool, and something else I could have done with that is put the reassembly grease on it here. And it's always a good idea. You can do it this way. Again, also put some in the cylinder here. Again, you just don't want things dry. You don't want the metal rubbing on the metal. So, and all it's going to cause is this thing will just smoke a little bit when it first starts up. That's okay. Okay, that's not a problem. There it goes. See a nice gentle tap. Don't overdo it. Notice I'm doing it with the plastic. There it goes. Okay. Now I'm to the compression ring. Again, I'm going to make sure that they're not lined up. That's really important. And on the two-stroke engines, because you don't want the rings to be traveling around, these rings are moving. They move around the piston. On the two-strokes, there's a little pin where these ring gaps need to be, because if you don't get it right, it'll break the ring. And also, if the ring can go around, what it'll do is when it gets to the intake and exhaust ports, the end of it will catch and it'll break it off. So you got to watch for that too. Again, how do you know that? It's all in the manual, right? And make sure you're looking at the manual. So hopefully these are going a little easier. Okay. Again, gentle. Be nice and gentle. No rush. No hurry. You don't want to have to, spend more money on rings. You don't have to, right? Almost there. There it goes. There's the first compression ring. Again, after a while, after you broke a few things, you learn how much you can force things. So what you've seen with me so far is we're good to go. I grabbed a little piece of my glove there, I see. So I'm going to tap it down until I get a little bit of tension on that ring. Kind of helps when you do that, because then when you push this in there, it will kind of stay there. Okay. All right, I lost it. It was actually wasn't paying attention. It was catching on the crankshaft on there a little bit. But again, because I'm not forcing it, I didn't hurt anything. I'm just taking my time. There it goes. Okay, so take the time to do it right. Be gentle. Massage the engine back together. Make sure the metal's not rubbing on the metal. Again, use the right tools. Again, this big flywheel goes on here next. You know, see the keyway here, and here's the key in the crankshaft, and that's also what times it. So in other words, when this thing turns and it goes past the pickup coil, past the coil, this magnet, that's when it'll spark. And again, we can go back and finish this and get this hooked up. Again, we need to obviously bolt the rod onto the crankshaft. Okay, it's a step-by-step process. One thing at a time. Take your time. Be gentle. Follow the manual. Make sure you got things the right tightness, again, the right torques, and you go from all these pieces to one that's back like this and functional. And the next thing is, most engines require a break-in period. So we'll talk about that next.